Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. As usual, it's me, Ivan, and I've got another watch video for you to enjoy. Today we'll be talking about the Seiko SLA023, a watch that I've wanted for a very long time, and the only reason I didn't get it earlier is that I hadn't seen it in person and I wasn't sure if it was worth the money. Because guys, 3,400 euro is a lot of money. In fact, that's Tudor Black Bay territory. However, now that I've bought this beautiful blue dial SLA, I'm happy to report it's better than I expected, and while not perfect, it's quickly becoming a favorite of mine. I bought this watch from relojeria-esparza.com here in Spain. They are an authorized dealer of Casio G-Shock, Citizen, and of course Seiko. They've been a supporter of the channel from the very beginning, so if you're interested in getting one of these yourself, contact them and they will give you their best price. I've left their contact info in the description below. Alright guys, I'll give this watch the full review treatment. I'll tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and I'll also show you some footage of it next to some other watches in my collection, such as my Tudor Black Bay and Omega Planet Ocean, as I'm sure many of you are curious to see how the Seiko looks like next to them, and if that raises any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. First of all, I would like to show you the packaging. I'll be honest, it's rather disappointing for a watch that costs more than 3 grand. It's just a cardboard box wrapped in PU leather, nothing more, nothing less. In it you get a rubber strap, the quality of which seems to be very good, but I haven't used it and I don't plan to anytime soon as I love the bracelet, which we'll talk about later. Here you also find the warranty instructions as well as a warranty card, and finally there is your movement manual. Now let me walk you through the dimensions and then we'll continue with the things that are a bit more interesting to discuss. You're looking at a case diameter of 44.3mm, a lug-to-lug of 50.5, while the thickness measures 15.3, and finally the distance between the lugs is 20mm. It's also a bit on the heavy side with 2 links removed. It weighs 210 grams, so believe it or not, it's a few grams heavier than an Omega Planet Ocean. But let's see how these numbers affect the overall wearability. Guys, on the wrist, this SLA023 aka Marinemaster has a lot of wrist presence and it looks incredibly beautiful. Due to its monoblock case, it does feel a bit top heavy, but at the same time it's surprisingly comfortable thanks to the case sitting flat on the wrist, and also thanks to the bracelet, which I think is very good despite what other people say about it. Since I've just mentioned the bracelet, let's have a closer look at it and get it out of the way. All the links are solid and joined together with pins and collars. I know people prefer screws, but to me it really makes no difference as long as the links are securely joined, and in this case they definitely are. As far as the finishing is concerned, it's as good as it gets. The fine brushing is excellent, it's very consistent, very well machined, and we've got these high polished details which, besides adding some contrast, they go well together with the high polished flanks of the case, and as a result making the watch look somehow elegant. I guess it's the clasp that could be a bit better. I mean, it's very cleverly engineered, but the design is quite unimpressive. If only this exterior part was milled and more modern looking, it would have been really great, but it is what it is. However, it's far from being a deal breaker. As I said, it's very cleverly engineered, and I use the ratcheting mechanism all the time because I don't have to take the watch off my wrist. One thing to keep in mind is that when you size the watch, don't try to have the clasp staying on the middle of your wrist, because this will cause the folding part to overhang, and besides being uncomfortable, it will create a gap between the bracelet and the wrist. Instead, it's the folding part that should be in the middle. Do that and I promise you the watch will wear very comfortably. I know some people go for strap-coat bracelets, which I'm very familiar with, but I honestly think in this case it's not necessary. On the other hand, if you like rubber straps, I can suggest you go for one from Craftsa Blue. In fact, I plan to get the orange one myself before next summer, as I think it will be a perfect match. On top of that, it's not unreasonably expensive, and it comes with a nice milled clasp with a ratcheting mechanism as well. I've left the link of it in the description below, and if any of you has any experience with Crafter Blue, please share it in the comments below. Next, let's have a word about the design, the build quality, and the finishing. The design is a reinterpretation of the vintage reference 6215 from the 1967, and I absolutely love how it has evolved. The monoblock case is beautifully finished, the curved flanks are Zaratsu high polished, the top of the lugs are finely brushed, and the separation of polished and brushed areas is very well defined. And then you get this tall coin edge bezel with a flawlessly machined knurling and the ceramic bezel insert, which also looks very nice. This is an exceptionally well built watch, guys. The design is very well thought out, and to me it's one of these watches that once you see it, you can't stop thinking about it. You just know that eventually you're going to own one, and when you do, there is no going back. I used to have a Marinemaster 200, the Zimbe 12 limited edition, which was great for under €1,000, but it didn't feel as special as this one. So I sold it, and I believe I did the right thing. I even see myself buying a second Marinemaster in the future, which is something that I can't say for any other watch in my collection. Now let's continue with the dial, otherwise this video will become too long. Here I'll just say that it's definitely one of the nicest blue sunburst dials I've had the chance to see, and out of all the Marinemaster 300 models, this one I like the most. The overall execution is excellent, the printing is very sharp, while the handset and the indices are very nicely finished. I think the second hand could be a bit better finished, as it doesn't look as good as the hour and minute hands, but other than that, everything looks just great. At 3 o'clock there is a date window, which in my opinion is very well integrated, and the printed frame definitely helps in that regard. By the way, I've seen that some SLAs come without the frame, instead they have a smaller applied index next to the date. I'm not sure why that is, but I think with the frame and without the index, it looks much cleaner. Speaking of the indices, these are filled with Seiko's Lume brights, and it's literally the most impressive lume out there, at least when it comes to initial brightness. It's also very long lasting, and an interesting surprise here is that Seiko has even decided to add some lume to the bezel insert. Here's a quick comparison with the Tudor Black Bay, which glows pretty nicely as well, but the Seiko clearly has the upper hand. Next we need to check the bezel. As already mentioned, the knurling is excellent, it's very grippy, and the action, while still a bit spongy, it feels nicer than on, let's say, a Seiko Samurai or an MM200. It has a bit of backplay, but it's very smooth, it has the right amount of resistance, and the alignment is pretty much spot on. One thing I would like to bring your attention to is the top surface of the bezel, and I'm very surprised that nobody mentions it. If you look at it closely, you'll see that it's a bit rough. I've done a bit of research, and literally every single Marinemaster 300 looks like this, even the previous SBDX models. So it's not a defect, it's just how these bezels come out of the factory, it's the way they're machined. But guys, when you pay €3,000, you just don't expect to see this on a watch. On the bright side, it's hardly visible with the naked eye, and the only reason I've noticed it is because I take close-up shots of my watches. To be honest, it doesn't bother me one bit, but I know for some watch collectors, especially those new to the hobby, who still believe perfection exists, it might be, I don't know, a deal breaker. That being said, I have nothing else to complain about this watch, and I still think it's very much worth getting it. Last but not least, I would like to mention the movement real quick. Inside of the SLA models you'll find the 8L35B caliber, which is based on the discontinued 9S55 Grand Seiko movement. It's a very robust and very reliable movement, which also happens to be very nicely decorated, although we can't see it. When it comes to the specs, it's a 4Hz movement with 26 joules, 50 hours of power reserve, and a stated accuracy of -10 to +15 seconds per day, which may not sound ideal, but in my case it's been performing about 5 seconds fast per day, and of course this is a result which I'm totally fine with. I don't know what impression I'm giving you about this Seiko, but guys, after 3 months of ownership, I absolutely love it, and despite the couple of imperfections mentioned earlier, I still think it's a fantastic watch with a charm of its own that cannot be easily explained. It has to be experienced, and for that reason I strongly recommend you go see it in person. Right now I own about 40 watches, and even next to my most expensive ones, the Marinemaster 300 looks and compares great. The build quality and the finishing are just as good, if not better, as on my Black Bay and Planet Ocean. So, opposed to what many people think, the SLA023 is not just an overpriced Seiko, but a very expensive Seiko that also happens to be very well built and very well machined for its asking price. As always, that's just my opinion, so feel free to disagree with me in the comment section down below. This is the end of today's video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, a thumbs up will be very much appreciated. And if you want to see some more Seiko watch reviews, check out my Seiko playlist and make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of my future videos. Thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.